Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. The Steelers make more moves to fill their coaching staff, including a former AFC North rival in Domata Peko. We'll talk about him, the new offensive assistant they've signed. We'll also compare that to what the Ravens have been doing, as they're basically in the same situation as the Steelers, trying to fill a long-time head coaching staff that they've had in there. We'll just discuss all that here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here, joined today by Alan Saunders. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and you can get $200 in bonus bets if you win. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders from SteelersNow.com. But he's not just from SteelersNow.com. He's live from San Francisco, where he is covering Super Bowl 60. He's got a Super Bowl 60 hat on. He's got a sports jacket on. This is the fanciest I think you've ever appeared on my podcast, sir.
I don't feel fancy. I'm wearing a free hat.
But you've got a sports coat on. You've got like a downtown background to you. You look like you belong on ESPN, or should I say the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, is the #1 podcasting network in the world. Alan, let's talk more about the Steelers coaching search. Again, they're looking to fill out Mike McCarthy's staff here. Two more moves that we've kind of learned today. Domata Peko, former Bengals defensive lineman. He used to be the Steelers defensive line coach. It hasn't been announced officially, but we've seen those reports out there. Also, Frank Cignetti Jr. returning to Pittsburgh, guy who was Pitt's offensive coordinator just a couple years ago. I covered him there. He joins as an unnamed position on the offensive staff so far. But we also got some solidification on certain roles on Monday. Tom Arth, officially the quarterback's coach. Ramon Chinyoung, officially the running backs coach. That not to miss. That wasn't much of a mystery. Same thing for Adam Henry, the wide receivers coach. But now we know officially James Campen, the coach that they hired who used to coach the offensive line for the Packers, is the offensive line coach, and Jari Evans, the guy who's up for being in the Hall of Fame as an offensive lineman from the Saints, he is going to be the assistant offensive line coach. We also know that the defensive pass game coordinator, Jason Simmons, will also double as the defensive backs coach for the Steelers. What are your takes on some of these moves, especially the newest move of getting Domata Peko in the room? He's a young coaching mind to be bringing in to coach that D-line.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike McCarthy said it. He wants a mix of young and old. I think you're seeing that play out. Some really experienced guys. James Campen, been around forever. Frank Cignetti, like wholly overqualified to have like a passing assistant job or something like that. And I think it's a good staff. I don't think I'm surprised that it's a good staff, but look, I mean, you can look at what the Steelers have had over the last few years under Mike Tomlin. I think this looks different. I think right now it looks better. I think that's a credit to Mike McCarthy. I think it's a credit to Art Rooney, because, you got to spend for bigger staff, guys with titles that we haven't seen before. That title comes with more money, man. You're not just saying a guy is a passing game coordinator. You got to pay him like one too. And so I think credit all around to putting together what looks like a really good group of coaches.
I think that's the exciting part about this, is that there is some stepping into the new now. I do wonder, how much larger is this, or is this flipping some names around to flip some names around, like, having a defensive passing game coordinator when it's really just the D-backs coach like Jason Simmons. Is that changing a whole lot there, other than just adding an extra title to someone's thing? I think that'll be interesting to see. We wouldn't see the books on how much all these guys are getting paid, but to your point, if this is an increase in the coaching staff, because we haven't seen the full thing, we don't know what Frank Cignetti Jr.'s official title is. for the offense, whether he's just a general offensive consultant or, assistant head coach, whatever it is. If this ends up being a larger staff, this is something that I think the Steelers, a lot of people have pointed to the Steelers have been cheaper on than everyone else in the league, and that could be something that helps them, kind of get more eyes and ears in the room when they're trying to figure out problem solve during weeks leading up to game days.
Yeah, I think it was one of the biggest and easiest things you could point to as a failure under Mike Tomlin, is that they did not have good coaching staffs. They didn't have big ones, and they have good ones. You can be small and good, and you can be big and bad, but small and bad seems like the worst of all possibilities. And I saw some people on Twitter saying, as you're seeing these hiring Steve Skarnecki as a chief of staff, passing game coordinators, it's like, oh well, clearly it was Mike Tomlin that was the problem with the coaching staff. It's like, not necessarily. Sometimes, and in fact, I see this a lot in sports, is that an owner needs to go through a change process to understand how they were not stacking up. It's one thing to hear from the guy that you're paying already and say, hey, we need more of this. Hey, I need more of this. We have less of this than everybody else, right? Everybody can think of a situation in their own world with your own boss where you say, hey, I need this. We need this. We should have had this. Everybody else has this. And then all of a sudden you go to replace that person. You interview 8 people and you say, well, I'll take the job, but only if you do this. Only if you get with the times about this. I think sometimes you need that process where you're bringing in external opinions directly into your face and saying, oh, boy, maybe. And so I don't think it really settles anything about where that process was going poorly with the last head coach and between him and Art Rooney, but certainly it looks better right now. And that's a good thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I do think it's a good thing if Art Rooney's learning there, because it wasn't like Mike Tomlin didn't want to bring other guys in. When he could bring someone, he brought in Brian Flores when the whole league wouldn't touch him at one point. So I think Mike Tomlin, certainly the evidence shows that he was willing to add, but it was maybe a holdup, somewhere else in the Steelers process. And now you're starting to see, okay, yeah, we just did all these interviews, and we need to know what we're working with here, and we need to know, what's the competition, because it's not just that the Steelers are interviewing these guys. The Steelers are interviewing these guys, and these guys are then it's not just that they're interviewing, these guys are also interviewing the Steelers, and they're being like, well, hey, if I go to somewhere else, they're going to give me these many coaches and this many assets to help me work. And it won't just be me and my position coaches. I'm going to have these extra assets in my coaching room. So I certainly think that that's part of the thing here. I want to circle back to Peko, a guy who, played against the Steelers for many years. This guy, it's kind of crazy if him coming in. If Cam Hayward's on this roster, him and Cam Hayward played across from each other on the defensive line for basically like 10 years. It's kind of crazy to think about him being in this room now. But this is a guy who came up, after he kind of spent some time away from playing. He became the Cowboys an assistant there, and then last year he coached with Coach Prime Deion Sanders in Colorado. He was their defensive line coach. This seems like one of those younger, aggressive moves that you were talking about. Like, look, there's plenty of older guys on this coaching staff that Mike McCarthy's assembling, but Peko could be one of those younger guys. Do you think maybe there's something to McCarthy's assembling a lot of the older guys, a lot of the younger guys on defense? When you look at guys like Simmons and guys like Graham and now guys like Peko, and then maybe he's getting the guys he knows a little bit more on offense, and he can still sign some young guys on offense, like Scott Tolzien is getting interviewed has been interviewed for the OC position. But I looked at that and I was like, I wonder if he's going with a younger side on the opposite side of the ball and more of people he inherently trusts on his side of the ball.
No, I don't know, because he interviewed Chase Hazlitt for the tight end coach position. Scott Tolzien's younger. CJ Ayu, outside linebackers coach, was interviewed. He's younger. I just think he wants that mix, right? This is a guy who's developed a lot of coaches. Look, they built a whole coaching staff at a guy who had worked for him before, and there's probably like another whole coaching staff out there that went untouched, right? There's a dozen names that I was able to put together with connections to Mike McCarthy that they didn't hire, and so or couldn't, whatever, one way or the other. And so he knows how to develop coaches. I think this makes sense. You can't, like, Mike Tomlin leaned on very veteran assistant coaches for almost all of his tenure. It made sense at the beginning of his tenure because he was young. He was the inexperienced one, right? So it made sense to surround him with older guys that had been there and done that, but never really made that transition to developing younger coaches, at least, at the kind of level that we're talking about. There was one here and there, but like not like half the coaching staff being guys in their, early 30s, guys on their first job at that position. That was just not something he ever seemed that interested in doing. Now, I don't really know how much that matters at the end of the day in terms of helping this team win. I think older guys are generally very competent, and I think that can be a good thing. But I'm not really going to nitpick. Like, Mike McCarthy's got a great history in terms of building coaching staffs, developing coaches. He was in Dallas for 5 years, and his staffs had 3 guys on them that are now head coaches in the NFL in 5 years. Like, he knows what he's doing here. And so, I don't know, did I have Domata Peko on my bingo card today? No, I did not. But I'm not really going to question it either because I think he gets it.
It certainly seems like he's assembling a staff that's going to be very interesting to watch coach this year and see how they develop guys. And again, on a roster that has a lot of potential. That's the other part of this, is that they're not rebuilding everything from the ground up. They've got a defense, they've got a young offensive line, and they're going to have draft picks that are going to help them, invest into this. I think there's a lot going for this staff, and they're still filling it in. We'll keep you up to date with those moves, but I want to take a step back and compare these moves to the Steelers' biggest rival, the Baltimore Ravens, who, it's funny. Mike Tomlin said for many years, we want to be like the Ravens want to be like us. That's what makes us so great. And then the Ravens fire John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin steps down, and they're both in the same coaching race at the same time. For almost 2 decades, they had the same coach. So I want to take a step back and look and get your thoughts on where both of these teams stand in comparison to each other. We'll do that and our first Stars and Skulls final grades of the year, looking at the quarterbacks. All that's coming up next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, want to remind you, this show is also brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one, remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits can save you hours every week. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. We're also brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. That's because it's Super Bowl 60, which is on Alan Saunders' hat right now. FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. He's out there in San Francisco covering Super Bowl week. Alan, let's go over the moves that we know also from the Ravens coaching staff. Now, this is as of Monday, so if they made other moves and I missed it, I apologize. But we know that the big hires that they've made are their coordinators. They've hired Declan Doyle, the Bears offensive coordinator. He's now moved over to being with the Ravens offensive coordinator. Basically getting the chance to call plays as he wasn't doing that in Chicago. And now they've also hired Anthony Weaver, Steelers head coach candidate, to the defensive coordinator position. And that's been interesting. They've also made other hires. Dwayne Ledford as an O-line coach, run game coordinator, Sean Flaherty as an assistant O-line coach, Tyler Santucci as an inside linebacker coach, Mike Mickens as a defensive backs coach / pass game coordinator on defense, Charlie Gelman assisting on defense as well as PJ Volker. They also have a special teams coach in Randy Brown. But bottom line is they've got their coordinators in place, and these are some of the younger minds that I think a lot of people are excited to see out there. Doyle, under an offensive head coach in Chicago, now he comes to a place where it's a defensive head coach, so he's going to get a lot more say with the offense. And then Anthony Weaver coming in to coach the defense. We know he was the Dolphins defensive coordinator. And he was someone the Steelers looked at, and he's under Jesse Minter, a guy that was one of the younger defensive minds in here. What's your opinion of this staff? And then, just by itself. And then after that, I want to take a step back and look at how it kind of compares to what the Steelers have done with their process.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Jesse Minter. I think he was one of the best head coach candidates in this process. It was not a surprise to me that he ended up with the Ravens. I felt like that was a natural fit from day one. Also really like Anthony Weaver. I think he's going to be a good head coach in the NFL. I don't think he's necessarily the world's best X's and O's defensive coordinator, but I think he's a real elite leader of men, and I think he'll be great for that unit, especially with Minter, who's obviously going to have a big input on the X's and O's anyway. I think, when you look at Baltimore and the team this season, and certainly you can attribute a lot to the injury to Lamar Jackson, and I don't think Lamar played great even when he was healthy. Didn't really look 100% down the stretch of the season. But really, I mean, this is a non-Baltimore Ravens-looking defense all year. I think it was very clear when they went out from the beginning, the reason they let John Harbaugh go is the defense was just really non-competitive. And, man, I think they did a great job between Minter and Weaver of putting together a plan that I think is going to work. Now, they still got to get some better personnel in there. I mean, their edge rushing group is very ordinary. Marlon Humphrey's getting up there. Kyle Van Noy's getting up there. But I think they can be so much better on defense right away. Where I have some red flags, honestly, is on offense. I felt like this was a team that probably should have tried to keep Todd Monken. Obviously, he gets promoted to head coach. You're not gonna win that fight. But I don't know if what I really want is Lamar Jackson learning a new offense right now. I don't know how that's going to go. I think and especially doing it under a first-time defensive head coach. I'm a little surprised that they did not, when they lost Todd Monken, pivot to another older offensive coordinator, more experienced. Like we talked about just a minute ago when Mike Tomlin was, a very young head coach, and he had Dick LeBeau and Bruce Arians as coordinators, and John Mitchell and a whole bunch of other guys who were been there, done that assistants. And now I look at Jesse Minter, who I really like as a head coach candidate, but a young guy, inexperienced, and not a lot of experience around him in the coaching staff. I don't know. I think individually I like all those guys. I just wonder if maybe they'd have been better off going with a more established offensive coordinator.
Especially when you look at Declan Doyle's resume. And listen, it's exciting because he was the coordinator under Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson and that offense were a lot of fun to watch this year. But here's Doyle's history as a coach. He started at Iowa as a student assistant, was an offensive assistant for the Saints, tight end coach for the Broncos for 2 years. And then after that was for a year, last year, he was this past season, he was the offensive coordinator for the Bears, but again, not the play caller. That was Ben Johnson. And he wasn't the primary offensive mind of that team. So this is going to be the first place where he's basically been able to control an offense. So he's coming in and he's getting two-time MVP Lamar Jackson. He's most likely getting Derrick Henry. A lot of experienced guys here. That's, whereas young, fresh minds are cool and they can be fun and they can, be something that could be exciting just to see how that develops. I also think that, like you said, it comes with an inherent risk of like, hey, when there's an offense that's already developed and you're bringing in the new young mind, sometimes that doesn't mesh. It'd be different if the Ravens had a super young quarterback that they were trying to mold with a brand new offense, but the Ravens offense hasn't been the big problem for them, over the past several years with them getting over the hump. And sometimes, mistakes in the playoffs were, but I didn't think it was their offensive system that was as much the problem. And it's going to be interesting to see how Doyle meshes with Jackson, Henry, and the weapons that they've been putting on offense.
Honestly, if I was hiring an offensive coach from that staff, I think I would have hired Antoine Randall for that job. Not saying like in general, but like for that job, I think I would have wanted someone who had been around a little bit longer and who understands a running quarterback better than Antoine Randall. I mean, I think there's I don't know. We'll see. It's a big swing. It's a high risk move. It could work out really well. It could also blow up. To me, I think I would be satisfied with a good enough offensive coordinator, knowing that no matter who the coordinator is, Lamar Jackson is going to win off platform, out of script, out of the playbook, an awful lot anyway, right? I think I would have just settled for competent. But it's a risky move. We'll see how it plays out for them. I think the Steelers kind of fall a little bit the other way, right? I mean, in comparison, where like probably not enough risk for some people. Even though Scott Tolzien will be, if he's the offensive coordinator, well, no matter all three guys they're interviewing for offensive coordinator will be a first-time offensive coordinator. So no matter what, they're going to have a first-time offensive coordinator. Obviously, Mike McCarthy's been there and done that. But I think the big difference there is the Steelers don't know what job they're really even asking these guys to do yet, especially in offense. Like, they don't have the piece. It's like shopping when you're hungry at the grocery store. It's like you don't even know what you want. You're just like, yeah, I need marshmallows and hamburger meat, and let's get some apples. And you're just throwing stuff in the cart, right? I mean, I think the Ravens went into this offseason with a plan and said, hey, let's fix the defense. And then they kind of got sidetracked from that plan. So I think it's two very different approaches. I think it's hard to really compare. Although I think I like the Ravens moves a little bit better for the job being done, but I think it's really tough to compare.
They're in different situations right now, right? Like the Steelers, it's funny, I think they are in the middle of kind of redoing both sides of the ball. The defense, it has a foundation, but there's a lot of young guys that are looking to step up and become the leaders of that defense soon, with Cam Hayward turning 37 soon, and TJ Watt not having his best year last year. All of this, is going to be interesting to see, how the Steelers compare, but but I think there's a lot of people that are going to point to Jesse Minter and the younger side of the head coach versus Mike McCarthy and the older side of the head coach, and how those two kind of duke it out, and where it puts the Steelers, against the Ravens. The Steelers have had the upper hand in this over the last several years against the Ravens. Sure, the Ravens won that playoff game, but by and large, outside of those two wins, the Steelers have kind of dominated the Ravens over the past 5-6 years, I think, outside of like the two games from 2 years ago. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes up or maintains the dynamics the Steelers have had in the division against the Ravens, even while they've had that MVP quarterback.
There's so many of those that we got to throw out now, right? I think it's either 7 or 8 of the last 10 over the Ravens.
Yeah.
They've really roughed them up. But it doesn't matter. I had my guy for SteelersNow.com, Joe Morris, and one of the things I always have him do is like he writes a lot of these like, the Steelers record on Monday Night Football, the Steelers record against the Ravens, and, whatever. Like all these Mike Tomlin as an underdog at home. And I'm just like, man, we throw them all out. None of that means anything anymore. It's all, it's Steelers Ravens because it's the laundry, and that's about it. I'm really interested to see how the dynamic of that rivalry changes, and really, the entire football team.
Certainly. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, it's finally time to break open the final grades of Stars and Skulls. We tallied them up, and we start at the quarterback position. See those grades next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This episode being sponsored by BetterHelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and so much talk about relationships. And it can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on you, most people are still figuring it out. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off yourself. It's easy to assume everyone else has the perfect relationship, but most people are working through something. Therapy can help you recognize patterns that might be weighing relationships down. It can help you communicate better, set healthier boundaries, and stop carrying everything alone. And even if you're not in a relationship right now, therapy can help you feel more confident in what you want moving forward. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the United States, and they do the initial matchmaking for you so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you can do that at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're also brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life this year. TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. It is finally time for us to get to our final Stars and Skulls grades. Now, as you guys know, we do all season long after each game. We've been doing them with Alan. We did them with Alan every Tuesday. We do our Stars and Skulls grade for each game. You got 1 to 3 stars or 1 to 3 skulls for good to great play or bad to all-time terrible play. And then, of course, there was the dreaded bus ticket grades that we handed out on occasion for truly terrible play with the Steelers. In some of the Steelers' really worst performances. So we've been doing those. Now, a lot of people have been asking me, hey, where the final grades been? I'm sorry, but the day after they lost in the playoffs, Mike Tomlin stepped down. And then a week after that, Mike McCarthy got out. We've been a little preoccupied trying to put things together. And then also, I was at the Senior Bowl. So it took us some extra time to get our final grades together this year.
We're busy.
We're big. Back up. Anyways, speaking of backups, we're at the quarterback, so we're going to start with the backup quarterback. And this one's a little tough because Mason Rudolph really didn't get too many chances. Aaron Rodgers really was only hurt for 1.5 games in the spots that he was in, and Mason really didn't have too many chances. Really, the only game that I thought he was even kind of proficient in was the Bengals game when he filled in and helped win that game. But when he filled in, it was kind of rough in a lot of spots. He had some tough performances trying to come in at the end. That's why he had on the year 1 star, 5 skulls in total. It's a D grade just because of where he was. I still think Mason Rudolph is still, a good backup quarterback. It was just the position that he was in this year. Oftentimes he was coming in when the game was pretty much over. The one time he came in was favorable was the Bengals game, and he handled it well, and that was his 1-star grade. But he also in the Bears game he made some crucial mistakes that really cost them, and then he had some other mistakes in other pitch hitting efforts. But despite the D grade, it's not a bad look at Mason Rudolph. I still think if you're going into this next season and Mason Rudolph's your backup quarterback, you have a good backup quarterback on your hands.
Yeah, I mean, they were in that Bears game, right up until the end.
Very true.
I don't think he played very well, but what you're asking for a backup quarterback to do is to give you a chance to win the game, and they had a chance to win the game. your backups aren't supposed to be good. They're your backups for a reason.
Right.
It's not a bad grade for a backup quarterback.
Exactly. So with that being said, let's move on to Aaron Rodgers here. He's the only other quarterback that touched the field for the Steelers in the season. We don't have a Will Howard grade. I know some people are probably like, Will Howard should get all the stars, even though he didn't play. But Alan, I'm going to give you a guess. What was my final grade? Because we do give out letter grades for the end of the year. What was my final grade for Aaron Rodgers on the season?
I'll say B-.
Very close. I went with a straight up B. He had 24 stars and just 10 skulls on the season. When I looked back at it, that's good enough for a B grade, 14 more stars than skulls. I thought the biggest thing that really held back Aaron Rodgers from having an even higher grade was just that when he hit his lows this season. It was just looking back at some of the grades that I gave him, he had all positive and just either positive or neutral grades through week 9 of the season. Because I really didn't pin the Packers loss or the Seahawks loss truly on him, or the Bengals loss. I mean, the Bengals loss, he was one of the biggest factors why they were even in that game. But the bad grades really started to roll in the second half of the season. He got a 3-skull performance for that game against the Chargers, where he just looked completely harassed and kind of frazzled by the pass rush. Same thing against the Bills. He also had a 3-skull game there. And then again against the Browns in their rematch against them. 3 good pass rushing teams really got against them. And that's where the bulk of his skulls came from. I also gave him a skull for the Texans game. Just not doing enough there. But, that's kind of where it comes from. It's not like he had several bad games to get to 10 skulls, because there's a lot of guys that will be on this list where they might have 8, 9, 10 skulls because they had 1 skull here, 1 skull here, 1 skull here. But really, it was just he had 3 games where he just could not handle the pass rush, and it crushed the Steelers in those 3 losses. And he mitigated it. Of all the pass rushing teams that he faced that the Steelers lost to, it's funny enough, but I think that he mitigated the Texas pass rush as best as he could until the game just broke wide open at the end. But that's why I only gave him 1 skull for that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pass rush is a real concern. I mean, maybe the Steelers will get a little bit better on the offensive line in another year, but they're probably not going to be elite. And he's not going to get any faster. I think if you're looking at the idea of running it back with Aaron Rodgers, I think how do you find a way to deal with those teams with better pass rush really becomes an existential problem. I mean, you can't throw it any faster. He was already the fastest quarterback in the league in time to throw. So, I mean, I think there's a real concern there. If I was defensive coordinator against the Steelers, I'd be sending the house against Aaron Rodgers every play, because it doesn't look like he can. It just seems like the whole play falls apart once he's pressured, and it's definitely a concern. But I agree that on the whole, teams weren't able to do that against him very often, and that he was pretty good. So, I mean, I think he's a very solid, middle-of-the-pack quarterback in the NFL right now. But it's just such a move that has such little upside. I understand why it's not very inspiring. I just don't see a lot out there that looks a lot better than that.
Yeah, I think that's the problem right now. Is if there was a ready option for the Steelers that was easy to get, I'm sure they'd get it. Or a path in the draft, that people were hoping would be around this time of the year.
You're gonna trade anything,
and it's not looking like that's going to be something regularly available. To your point, I think there's a lot of people groaning out there when they say Aaron Rodgers again. Didn't we just get off this ride? Yes, you did, but that's the thing is I think that it's a ride that, again, got you a B performance from a quarterback, which, again, Alan, without Aaron Rodgers, this team probably falls apart a lot earlier than it did than just make it to the playoffs, because when you look back at the Steelers seasons and how they performed in the last years, because everyone looks at it and says, oh, this team has just been the same exact team every single year because they've been 10-7 for 3 straight years, and they haven't had a playoff win since the 2016 season. But this team had to win a completely different way. When you look back at those other teams, those defenses, even from 2024 and 2023, they were top 10 scoring defenses. They were being carried by TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, those guys playing at high levels. For 3 straight years, they were a top 10 defense. They took a 1 break in 2021, but before that, they were also a top 5 defense. And this year they dropped down to 17th. That's the most. That's the lowest they've ranked in points allowed since 2021. And outside of 2020, it would have been the lowest since 2014. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't infuse himself into this offense, the Steelers team doesn't win the division, nor do they make the playoffs. And I think that's where it's like the acknowledgement that, like, hey, he did have a good season, especially for a 42-year-old with a very young offensive line.
I'm telling you, he's going to have other options if he wants to explore them. The Steelers will not be the only team that'll be trying to bring him in.
For certain. Alan, thanks for joining us here on the
Well,
Lockdown.
hold on. We gotta add at least a skull.
Okay, what's the skull here?
We got to at least add one skull. It doesn't need to be a full bus ticket, but Skylar Thompson got beat up in Ireland, and I feel like that can't go unaccounted for over the course of the season, right? I mean, you didn't even play. I'm not saying it needs to be a bus ticket, but you didn't even play and you still got beat up. Like, that's at least one skull.
Let's see. Hold on. Is there a Band-Aid emoji? I want that might be what we go with there. Here's like a Band-Aid emoji. We'll give him a Band-Aid emoji for that. Like, he didn't even play. It's like he didn't even go to work, man. Come on. How'd you get fired on your day off?
He didn't get fired, but he got beat up on his day off, and that's a what. I mean, I feel like it's at least one skull.
We'll give Skylar Thompson a skull for his time in Ireland there. But it's a funny point by you. It's funny, I completely forgot about him entirely, and I didn't even look up to see what he did this year. I was just like, just Aaron and Mason because Will didn't play and there. Okay, let's do a hypothetical, Alan. If Will Howard played this year, give him 5 games, what would have been his stars and skulls?
That's really tough, honestly.
If you're saying anything lower than 15 stars in 5 games, you're a hater.
I'll just say that last year, if I was grading him at Ohio State last year,
okay,
there probably would have only been about 4 games where he got a star, maybe 5. Out of what they play, 14, 15. So you're getting a star about a third of the time. Now, some of them were 2 or 3 stars.
Yeah.
So, and then, like, there were definitely some skulls in there. So, I mean, I'd say probably, like, if you got 5 games, I'd say you get 3 stars, 5 skulls.
I think that's a very fair rate because, again, I think there's a bigger learning curve that people can understand about the NFL. And both of us liked Will Howard going into the draft process. Both of us were like, hey, they should be looking at this guy. He could be the future Mason Rudolph for this team. I even said they should get him in the 4th. They got him in the 6th. I said, hey, that's a steal. But
we're sitting there at the Ohio State Pro Day, and Ed Thompson, my photographer, is shooting. He goes, he looks just like Mason. It's like I'll go pull up pictures. He goes, the throwing motions, everything looks just like Mason. I'm like, all right. That was the first time that got in my head. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of see it. And look, I think Will Howard's
talented.
I don't think there's a lot in this draft class that I like more than the idea of letting Will Howard develop for another year, maybe try to win the backup job. Who knows? But, like, I mean, things don't go well when you play 6th-round picks as rookies, no matter what the position, almost ever.
Yeah. It's very. I know everyone wants to point to Tom Brady, but pull me up another 6th-round quarterback that just dices.
Also, Brady played what, 3 games? Like,
yeah.
You know. Yeah. I mean,
to your point,
if he was playing in September, it might not have gone so well.
Right, but again, for Will Howard, I think to your point, giving him a year to kind of sift through things that could be interesting, and also to your point, like, we were both at the Senior Bowl. I'd take Will Howard over anyone I saw at the Senior Bowl. So, like, another thing to note about how this draft process.
I mean,
the Steelers.
I think Garrett Nussmeier has a much higher floor, but I like Howard's ceiling.
Exactly. And that's where I see, like, hey, Nussmeier can come in and be solid for you, but I think Will Howard, he can be that solid and then also bring an extra oomph to you if he puts some things together. But just wanted to bring him up for some funsies here on the final grades. But those were your quarterback's final grades. Let me know if you thought they were too lenient, too harsh, whichever direction they leaned. But we'll be rolling out those final grades over the next couple of weeks here. Alan, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Saunders_PGH on social media, SteelersNow.com is where you can find my written work and my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive, are on the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders. Alan, thanks for joining us here. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get social media. My handle is always at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here tomorrow with more on the Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.